Alrighty, so we have a half an hour, and I have some really juicy tidbits to share with people about scene structure today. We're talking about powerful scenes. So if that's not what you're here for, you can enjoy it anyway. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about myself. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the CEO and founder of Fictionary, and I created Fictionary after I became a best-selling author. And Fictionary has become so many things beyond software. It's a community, it's these free events, it's our Ask an Editor space in the community, and on and on. And really appreciate everybody who's part of the community and supporting us in this endeavor. I'm a best-selling author, both of fiction and nonfiction. My most current books are the right novels that sell. So that's Secrets to Writing a Series, Editing Success, Outlining a Novel, and Writing a Fantasy. And I've won some awards, which is all very exciting for me. I'm also a structural editor. I am co-authoring Secrets to Writing a Romance with Linda O'Donnell. She's here today, yay! And Secrets to Writing a Mystery with Lisa Taylor, both coming out this year. So that's who I am. For writing a sensational scene, my recommendation is if you outline your novel first, even just the basics, you are going to have an easier time writing fantastic scenes. And the reason for this is you could write a good scene that works, but on its own, it's just a scene, and it becomes sensational when it belongs in your book. It's in the right place. It's doing the right things. So today, that's the bigger picture. So if you know what your book is about by outlining, all you need to do is write a skeleton blurb and maybe do the 5 story arc scenes, and you have enough to start writing scenes. And if you start from that point, you know what your story is, and every scene you write will actually belong in that story. This is leading up to our Write Sensational Scenes course, which starts next week. And Lisa Taylor's here, and she's actually teaching it. And so what we're giving you today is a quick view of what you need to write a sensational scene. And then this course will take you through 6 weeks of how to do this, starting with your deep scene structure and point of view goals. And then we look at hooks, we look at the scene middle, the scene climaxes, conflict of tension, etc. Everything you need. So you can access that in Fictionary Live. Also next week, I don't know if Brandy here, but Brandy is going to do a live edit in the free event in the community of the latest fiction book that I am writing. So I've sent her the scene. She's going to edit it live, and I'm going to sit there and be super duper nervous. But there we are. That's next Thursday, I think, at 2 o'clock. Alrighty, so that is who I am and what we are about. So let us talk about. This is the bulk of what we're going to talk about today. So I've chosen a bunch of genres, not all genres, but ones that I've read heavily in and have done a bunch of research in. So we're going to look at these 5 novels, and I looked at cross genres. And the first one we have up here is Romance, The Bodyguard by Catherine Center. And in a romance, the main genre question is, how do the love interests get together? So in a romance, we know they get together. So the reader wants to see how. So that's really, when readers pick up a romance, that's what they're looking to do. In a fantasy, like Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros, the reader is looking for, will good triumph over evil? That's the main high-level goal that falls right in all of fantasy, falls right into it. Then we have science fiction, and this is Space Between Worlds by Micaiah Johnson. And really the big question for science fiction is what impact will technology have, or advanced technology have, on humanity? That's what the reader's looking for there. In a thriller like The Housemaid by Frida McFadden, it's how will the protagonist survive? And in a mystery like Sandra Brown Mean Streak, it's who committed the crime and why. Little bit of a difference, just to throw it in there. A psychological thriller would be what really happened, because usually there's an unreliable narrator, we don't really know. And a horror would be, can the protagonist survive a terrifying threat? So we're going to look at these 5 books here. First thing I want to talk about before we get into that is, what is a scene? So that's kind of important if we're trying to write sensational scenes. And a scene is just a unit in in your novel that has dialogue or action. That's it. How you place those scenes in your novel and where you place them is your artistic choice. And it's very important to your story and your story flow. And today we're going to assume you've placed these perfectly in your novel, you know where they go, and we're going to talk about what makes the structure in these scenes. The other thing I want to say about scenes is there's a difference between an opening image, your first scene in your novel, sorry. So your first scene may or may not be the opening image. And today we're looking at these 5 novels. In Fourth Wing, the opening image is not the first scene. The first scene is where action or dialogue happens, and the opening image in this is a blurb of text about the school world. And in the space between worlds, same thing. The opening image, not the first scene. The first scene has action. The opening image is a little blurb at the beginning about the world. All of these in first scenes have genre specifics. So when we look at The Bodyguard, it's a romance primarily with a thriller subplot. And the romance is between Hannah, a bodyguard, and Jack, who's a famous movie star. And the thriller part of this, so the romance is how do they get together? And the thriller part is, can Hannah protect Jack from stalkers? In Fourth Wing, it's a fantasy with a romance subplot, often referred to as a romantasy. Single point of view, it's Violet. The romance is between Violet and Xaden. It's the enemies to lovers trope. Space between worlds. It's science fiction with a romance subplot, and the romance is between 2 women, Dell and Kara. And Dell can travel across worlds, and Kara is her boss, so there's a power dynamic in the romance subplot. Then we have The Housemaid, which is a thriller with contemporary women's fiction. Mean Streak is a mystery with a romance subplot where Emery's the protagonist and Hayes is the main character of the romance subplot. So it's an interesting one because it's multiple points of view, and the protagonist carries the mystery side of the story, and Hayes carries the romance side of the story. Okay, so I'm going to take you over to the app. So let's talk about first, for every book, we're just going to have a quick look at the story blurb. And the story blurb, Hannah must learn to love herself, otherwise she won't find her happily ever after with Jack. That's for the whole story. So when the author's writing this, that's what they're concentrating on. And, you know, Hannah's the protagonist. It's a single point of view book. So when we go in and we look at The Bodyguard, so here, I'm going to just go to the scene notes for a second. Before knowing that you have a sensational scene, we have a thing called a scene skeleton blurb. And a scene skeleton blurb just means who's the point of view character for the scene? What are they doing? Like what do they want? Otherwise, something bad will happen. And so for Hannah, in this scene, Hannah must keep her promise to her dying mother. Otherwise, she will live with the guilt of disappointing her. And so what we're going to do is we're going to look at the scene structure here, and I'm going to show you in here what points to the romance genre for this book. If we go to the entry hook, it's right here. Mother's dying wish was for me to take a vacation. So that makes you want to know, like, who is she? Why is her mother dying? Is this a good or a bad thing? We don't know yet. And so that's the entry hook right in. Then here we've got the point of view goal. And so this comes under the character plot, and her goal is to keep her promise to her mother. And she doesn't realize at the time that it's her last mother's wish. And so it's quite important. Then here we have the scene middle, and look at it. If you look at this tab here, it's right in the scene middle, which is under the plot tab. And the scene middle is coping with her mother's death. So that's all she's trying to do here. So first she's made this promise. Now she's coping with her mother's death. And then a scene climax. So she's promised her mother she's going to go on this trip. She reacts. She buys 2 tickets to Toledo for the weekend. And then the exit hook is, now all I had to do was to force myself go. And when we look at the exit hook, who did she buy the second ticket for? And will she go? And so here, this little scene tells us we're about to read a romance, because she ends the scene with, she got 2 tickets. So who is she going with? And it just gives us a hint. So when you're structuring your scene to be entry hook, point of view goal, scene middle, climax, exit hook, think about your genre and can you put something in there? The story map is over here, and this is the scene structure, but what I want to do first, I'm going to select none, and I want to select my scene skeleton blurb. And the scene skeleton blurb is the point of view character, their goal, and what if the goal fails. Now we only have one scene in here, but you could have this for your whole novel. And so for this scene, we know that Hannah must keep her promise to her mother. Otherwise, she's going to live with the guilt of disappointing her. And this is the consequences. And so you know that you have any. So now when you're writing the scene, you know exactly what this scene is about. And everything you do in this scene is to make it harder or easier for her to keep this promise. Under the select journey step, we can look at the scene structure. So you have your entry hook. Why does Hannah's mother want her to take a vacation? Her goal is to keep that promise. The scene middle is coping with the death. The reaction and the climax is buy 2 tickets to Toledo. And the exit hook is who is it for and who will she go? And so we can see here how this is a perfect scene structure for a romance novel in the first scene in the novel. So now if we go to the bookshelf, the next book up is Fourth Wing. There we go, Fourth Wing. So we're now in the fantasy genre. So here I haven't put the whole scene in because it's a really long scene. So we can go from a very short scene to a really long scene. Violet's scene skeleton blurb is Violet must cross the parapet without falling, otherwise she will die. This is the goal for this scene. And so when we look at the entry hook, we've got the sentence in the book is conscription day is always the deadliest. That's how the book starts. So you think, what is conscription day? And it's the deadliest. So the question is, well, is Violet going to die? And so this shows that death is at stake right in the first sentence. It hooks you for the tone of the story. So the story is about violence, and the reader wants to know if the protagonist will die. And so right away, one sentence, we have a whole bunch of information about the story. Then we have the point of view goal, but I can handle my rucksack and I can handle myself. So Violet, this is 3 pages in where her goal is. So we get you get a little bit of backstory, a lot about the story, and then you get her goal is to live. And this is the moment she states the story goal as well as the scene goal. The scene to this point is Violet really doesn't believe she has the skills to survive in the Rider's Quadrant. Her sister is a decorated warrior. She now is put in an impossible situation. And because it's linked to her main story goal, it really works for this scene. In the scene middle is, don't die, Violet. I'd hate to be an only child. And she grins. This is Mira, her sister, and walks away, sauntering past a line of gawking candidates as word spreads of exactly who she is and what she's done. So this is right in the scene middle. So now Violet has had her sister with her, helping her, and she's on her own. So the scene takes a change in direction. The scene middle is where now she's going to face a more difficult time. The scene climax, she's standing at the parapet. It's this thing that goes across between buildings, super high up. It's stormy, it's windy, it's raining. And some poor cadet falls off. And so her line is, oh God, my hand flies to cover my mouth, but he loses his grip on the water-slick stone and falls, disappearing from view. And so that's the climax scene. There's left Violet standing there. And then here comes Zayden, the love interest. A wicked smile curves his lip, your turn. And this single line of dialogue, your turn, is spoken by a hostile character. There's the cliffhanger. And so we know from all of this structure of this scene, this is clearly a fantasy. And we know it's a life and death stakes book. Again, if we go to the story map, her point of view, her goal, and what if goal fails? So Violet's the point of view. Her goal is to stay alive, and if she fails, she dies. It's really clear. This is the scene skeleton blurb. Simple as that. That's all you need to know about this scene to write it. And then if we go to scene structure, we see the hook, will Violet die? Goal, stay alive. Scene middle, Mira abandons Violet at the entrance, and she's got to survive on her own. The climax, the cadet falls. The exit hook, your turn. And so now Violet has to go. All right, so then we have science fiction. So we will go to Space Between Worlds. And here, this is a sci-fi story with a romance subplot, and the goal for this, or the scene skeleton blurb for this scene, is Kara must make Dell worry, otherwise she won't feel cared for. It sets up the romance and it hints at the genre. Let's go to the entry hook. Right in the first paragraph, or second paragraph, sorry. On Earth, number 197, so that's the number of Earth she's on. I died at 3 months old. So the entry hook is, well, how can you possibly be alive and dead at the same time? So right away, we know we're reading something that's not quite normal. Then we have the point of view goal. So here, Dell's been calling me, but she's only irritated now that I won't answer until she's concerned. So this is on the character tab. So she's trying to make Kara worry. That's her goal right now. And this is already setting up, there's a power dynamic in this relationship. Then we go to the scene middle. And here, I'm here. Kara knows that she's safe. So here is the goal change. So right at the scene middle, she's let Kara know she's not dead. She made it to this other Earth fine. Her goal changes as she's downloading data from this Earth to bring home. And so now she's got to focus on that. So one thing I want to say about the middle, often in a scene, the point of view goal will change. This is not a place to break a scene. In a scene, it's often, if the point of view character changes, the location changes, the time changes, that's a good place to break and start a new scene. When the point of view goal changes, that's your scene middle. So if you're having trouble finding your scene middle or creating one, this is where you put in some type of conflict that forces the goal to change and makes the rest of the scene harder. The scene climax is, but I steal a little time exploring the place fate tried to keep me from. And so here she decides to spend more time on the planet instead of going back to her own planet Earth. And so here comes in the sci-fi genre, like, how can she do this? We want to know what technology is there. And then the exit hook, I'm a little more valuable walking down the mountain than I was walking up. Well, why? Why is she more valuable on this Earth? And that leads us right into the next scene. So that's science fiction. Then we have the housemaid. So here, the scene skeleton blurb, the unnamed character must resist giving police information, otherwise she will be arrested. So the entry hook is, if I leave this house, it will be in handcuffs. So why? What's the crime? Where are they? There's so many questions here that it leaves it nice there. We don't even know who the character is, and we don't know who the character is through the entire scene. So we look at the point of view goal, and here, maybe they're hoping to trick me into telling them something I shouldn't know. So in this case, she's sitting with the police, they're interrogating her, and she's thinking, don't tell them anything, right? So good luck with that, is her thinking, I'm going to say the wrong thing and I'm going to get arrested. So that's her goal. Then we get to the scene middle, and you can see how nicely these scene middles are right in the middle, just by where this bar is. She's now being interrogated by the police, and he asks her, why did you go up there in the first place? And he's talking about the attic upstairs in the house she's in. And I pressed my lips together. I told you I heard a sound. And so now she's right at the middle. So let's go to the middle over here. And so here is, her goal is really just not to tell them anything. So her goal hasn't changed here. She's just now under more stress because the officer is trying now to really, really pressure her. Then we get to the scene climax here. He's wondering if he's got enough information to snap those cuffs on my wrist. He isn't sure. If he were, he would have done it already. So this is where she understands she's not going to be arrested. She's made it through this interview. And then in the exit hook, another cop says, hey, you won't come upstairs. You won't believe this. And he's found something, but we don't know what it is. And there's the hook of, well, who is she? Why does she think she'll be arrested? And up here, we know that they found a body upstairs, so that there has been a murder that's happened. And that gives us the scene structure. And this tells us what type of book it is. And when we look, so we've got a thriller here and a mystery here, and we're going to have an event on the real differences between thriller and mystery. But here, this is a crime that happens at the end of the book. And so it falls into the thriller category. So then we have our final book, And the final book is Mean Streak by Sandra Brown. And this is our mystery. And so this is the one that was a prologue. So, right. And it's an active scene. And so we look at the story blurb. Emery must figure out who's trying to kill her, otherwise she will die. You know this from reading the book description that that's what this is. And here, this is a scene where Emery is hurt. And so the scene's skeleton blurb is Emery must keep moving, otherwise she will die. So that's what this scene is about. And the entry hook is Emery hurt all over, it even hurt to breathe. So that is, why does she hurt all over? That's the question we want to have answered. Then we look at the point of view goal, and here, by owning the pain, running through it, overcoming it. So here, Emery's goal is she's got to keep moving. She's out on this mountain. It's really cold. She's not dressed for it. She could seriously die of hypothermia. Her goal is like get up and keep moving or she's going to die. Then we get to the scene middle. It's a very short scene, you can see. How much further to go? Please, not much farther. She has a moment where she thinks she can't survive. She just can't do this. And she's got to pick herself up and keep going. In the scene climax here, she's hit in the back of the head. And the exit hook is who hit her. So now we're fully set up for a mystery that she's been attacked. We don't know by who, and we don't know why. And a mystery is, well, who did it and why did they do it? We can tell this book is a mystery just by the scene structure. Okay, so that is all of these books. All right, well, thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of your day wherever you are in the world, and we will see you soon.